time to look at the stories in the news this morning that's got everybody talking. To do that, we're joined by Andrew Neil and Afua Adom. Good morning to you both.
Well, first of all, Andrew, the Daily Mail are howling at the moon. They're howling for the resignation of Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary. Fair enough or not?
Well, if you're a Tory minister and the Daily Mail is howling for your resignation, then I think you know you're in some trouble. Look, the whole thing has been a shambles. Young lives have been set back, in some cases perhaps even destroyed, certainly injured for some time to come. So the question is, who's responsible for this? Who's taking the blame? Is it the Secretary of State? He's not resigning. Is it Ofqual, the agency that organised the exams, and the famous algorithm? Nobody there's resigning, and they've disappeared without trace. It's a very British story. Something disastrous happens and everybody runs for the hills and no one takes the responsibility for it. The Secretary of State was warned by the Select Committee of the House of Commons that there was a real problem with this algorithm. The Royal Statistical Society warned there was a real problem with it. The experience in Scotland a few weeks before showed what kind of problems there would be, and yet he's still not taking the responsibility for it. So where does the blame end? Who is going to carry the can for this shambles?
Yes,
Where is the Prime Minister, I'm asking? It seems to be he's in your part of the world. He's gone on his holidays to Scotland.
Well, that's the thing. It seems that when there is some sort of crisis, that the Prime Minister just kind of disappears, just goes into the clear blue sky, is always on holiday. You know that he missed so many of those COVID meetings at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. And I have to agree with Andrew there when he said that someone needs to take the blame and heads need to roll from this, whether it's Gavin Williamson, whether it's the head of Ofqual. Somebody needs to sit up and take responsibility, because the damage that we've done to our young people who have taken BTECs, GCSEs and A-levels is insurmountable. And it could potentially ruin people's lives, people's futures, and destroy young people's potential. And I absolutely think heads need to roll for this. Somebody needs to take the blame, and it actually does need to be Gavin Williamson.
OK. Guys, let's talk about Public Health England. Its head is rolled. It's to be abolished and replaced with a new body called the National Institute for Health Protection. All well and good, Andrew, except people might say, is this the time to do it? You could argue that they're reinforcing the defences ahead of a second pandemic spike. But there's also criticism as to the person who will lead this new organisation, Baroness Dido Harding, bearing in mind her track record elsewhere.
So, Public Health England, clearly a failing quango. His record through the pandemic has been pretty awful. So what is the government solution? It is, let's make it even bigger. Let's add even more responsibilities to it, give it an even bigger budget, and let's bring in someone who has no real experience in public health, someone who used to run a mobile phone company, responsible for one of the biggest data breaches in modern times, someone who's a Tory peer, naturally went to private school and then Oxford, and is married to a Tory MP. Put them in charge of this now £10 billion quango. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? It's obviously sheer genius.
Well, Fia, this is the woman who led the NHS test and traced, which people called a fiasco.
I missed that bit out.
Yeah, what do you think of her appointment?
For our test and trace.
What do you think of her appointment, Afua?
I don't understand why it's someone who has no experience of healthcare or working within the NHS at any point in charge of a new body that's supposed to be in charge of our healthcare. It doesn't make sense. As well as leading the failure of track and trace, she was also the boss of TokTok when they had one of the hugest data breaches ever. You know, she was head of TokTok when they got 2 awards for terrible customer service. And now she is the person that we want to have this remodeled German-style public health authority for England. That's never going to work.
Well, what may be working is eating out to help out. Now, Andrew, you have not been contributing to this because you're not in the country, so you haven't had one of Rishi's dishes on a Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday evening so far. But some restaurants have pulled out of this scheme over the antics of rude and entitled diners, which I'm sure, Andrew, we've all experienced. We've all looked around a restaurant. We've all seen people like that. But they are getting 10 quid a head off, aren't they?
Yes, but the restaurants are saying, Andrew, despite them getting the £10 off, you know, these are restaurants that have been really struggling since March, you know, really delighted to be open again. But obviously they have to follow guidelines. They have to have social distancing. Maybe the service is a little slower because they've got, you know, they've got fewer staff. But they're saying, some of them are pulling out of the scheme, saying that diners, you know, have this sense of entitlement and they're complaining already about either the lack of staff or, you know, the speed of their food getting to them. Are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not really. I mean, I don't see why people should have a sense of entitlement when they're getting 10 quid off their restaurant bills, courtesy of the taxpayer. But the problem, I think, is, and I've noticed this even here in France in some restaurants, the service isn't what it was. Because I think there's not as many people. People are not quite used to what they were doing. There's some new people being in. And I would have thought that everybody should just cut the restaurant staff a little bit of slack. I mean, these are difficult times. Social distancing makes running a restaurant or a bar more difficult. Don't be entitled. We are all in this together in a way. And we all have to make some compromises.
Have you taken advantage of the scheme, Afua?
Oh yes, I've had one of Rishi's dishes. I've had a few of Rishi's dishes, to be honest. And I think I kind of agree with what Andrew said there, though. I think people should cut restaurant staff and retail workers and anybody who is working on, you know, in public sector facing jobs, just cut them some slack. You know, restaurants haven't been open for a while. People are still getting back to work. And you might have people working there who are anxious about being back at work, about being around crowds of people. I think, you know, we're getting £10 off and that's great. But we also need to be respectful of other people, respectful of the people that are serving us, whether we're in a pandemic or not. And I do think that people just need to chill out. You're getting £10 off, but that doesn't mean you need to be an entitled person at a restaurant.
Afua, we're getting it for the month of August, and then it comes to an end. Do you think it should be extended? I mean, the whole idea is to boost the economy.
You know what? I think it might be a good idea if it was extended into September. I think people would definitely take advantage of it. It depends on what cost that would be to the government. They're saying it could be, you know, it could run into about £350 million or something like that, one of those figures. If the government can afford it and if it can be extended, I think it would be a good boost for the restaurant industry if it can be continued into September. But obviously that depends on where we are when September comes.
Right. Andrew, you're a driver.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, what do you think about this business of driverless cars? The Department of Transport is looking at plans to permit advanced lane-keeping systems in cars that would allow hands-free driving on British roads for the first time, maybe as soon as next year.
It's not going to happen. Simple as that. And I hope it doesn't happen. Look, one day we will have driverless cars. There's no question about that. That's the way it's going. Indeed, we won't even own cars. We'll want a car. It'll be delivered driverlessly, and we'll get in it without a driver, and it will take us where we want to go, and then we'll dump that car. That's the way the world is going. And the technology is moving in that direction too, but it's not there yet. And to go off half-cock would set the whole thing back for years and years. I certainly wouldn't allow that technology at the moment. I certainly wouldn't text while driving, or I'm told I can watch a movie on Netflix or whatever these days too. I just think it's one of these things that's going to come, but the time is not right, and I would urge real caution on the government. What's the urgency? Get the technology, get the testing right before we go down this road. After all, when it comes to testing and technology, you wouldn't exactly say the government was in the Premier Division.
Well, just put Dido Harding in charge of it. It'll all be sorted out, I'm sure. Smart motorways is an example, I think, Afua, of what Andrew's talking about there. They're wheeling them in. They're absolute death traps. They're there before the technology's really there to make them work.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think the AI is there yet, from what I know, that would allow this to work in the proper way, because it's not just about the driverless cars. You need to have the infrastructure in place with junctions and traffic lights and all the rest of it for this to properly work. The infrastructure is not there and the AI is not there, then definitely driverless cars is a no-no. Why the rush to get this out? I don't understand. Let's just relax on that one. Get the testing done properly, get the infrastructure in place, and then we can think about it.
What, would you trust a driverless car?
No, I have terrible... I think... I would worry that suddenly the technology would go wrong. It would be like some terrible B movie, you know, that I'd be in a car and suddenly all the doors would lock and it would go mad and start going the wrong way down the motorway. And there'd be nothing you could do. It's a rogue one. You might get a rogue one. You know, like you get rogue white goods and they go, oh, that was probably made on a Friday, that fridge. That's why it keeps breaking down.
Your driverless car,
Get one of those, a driverless car that's made on a Friday.
Yeah, but then it would give you someone else to criticise besides me. It would be interesting.
Yes, because I like backseat driving, so, you know, it would be no good for me if you weren't there, would it?
Say no more. So, Andrew, what are your plans with quarantine then? Do you plan to live in France forever, or what's going to happen to you?
No, not forever. But there's no sign this quarantine's coming to an end yet. So it's difficult to get back to the United Kingdom with 14 days in place. So far, the French have not retaliated, and I don't think they're going to retaliate. The French want British tourists here. They're angry with what the British have done, but I think they're just going to have to suck it up. And people are arriving here from the country, taking their chances, and there's still quite a few British tourists in the south of France.
OK, we feel for you.
I'm looking at that sunshine going, poor Andrew.
We feel for you. Poor Andrew, having stuck there.
Someone has to do it.
OK. Bye, guys. Thanks a million. Thank you both very much indeed.
Bye.
Nice talking to you. Thank you.